All right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. I conduct rezoning hearings on behalf of the mayor and council and make findings of fact, which I put into a written report, along with my recommendation, which I then send along to mayor and council for their consideration and for their final decision. My report will be based on the information submitted to me, which includes the rezoning application, the staff report, all written approvals and protests, all correspondence, and the testimony given at tonight's public hearing. A recording of tonight's testimony is being made. If requested, a transcript will be prepared. With that in mind, if you testify, please speak clearly and begin by stating your name and address. John Beal of the Planning and Development Services Department is assisting me today and will begin each case by stating the case briefly. Mr. Beal, the first case is case C92103, Casas del Cerrito.
Yes, Mr. Reno, as you know, this is you continued this case from the May 6th. And as to date, as far as new protests, there have been 3 approvals and then 19 protests, 6 of those outside the 150-foot area and 7 within the 150-foot area. And that's a protest by total lots is 16.3%, and a protest by total area is 5.9%. And as of to still the same of unsigned letters and emails, 6 emails, letters of protests were submitted to PDSD. And after we had calculated the approval calculation comments, we received 5 more protests.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant like to be heard on this matter?
I would, sir. This is Paul Oland.
Thank you, Mr. Oland. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Paul Oland with Paradigm Land Design. Address is 7090 North Oracle Road, number 178-193, 85704. Here representing the applicant and property owner. So if it's all right with you, Mr. Reno, I won't repeat everything that I went through earlier this month. I'll just kind of go through what's new. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So briefly, of course, this is an infill project. South Pantano area plan calls for densities up to 6 rack in existing neighborhoods and more. When it's along a collector like this, we're well within that, of course. It also calls for walls and landscape vegetation to soften the transition between existing and new development. We've got that, and I'll get into that in just a second. We've also got a rec area, which I'll address more on a later slide. This proposal is similar to other recent infill approvals in Tucson. Differences, our lot sizes are actually closer to the surrounding homes than the examples I gave earlier this month. And as an aside, in yesterday's paper, I read that the city council is actually considering amending the code to allow casitas or secondary residences to be developed on lots with existing homes, which is a strong acknowledgement that adding infill density is appropriate and of course makes much better use of the city's infrastructure. So since we met earlier this month, we've held another neighborhood meeting and corresponded with neighborhood association leaders and crafted several additional conditions of approval to address some concerns. So I'm just going to run through those real quick. These are just the procedural conditions of approval that are standard. We're okay with those, of course. From a traffic standpoint, we've heard two primary traffic-related concerns. At first, that there are some issues with speeding and wrong-way driving, especially on Bonanza there, which is a split collector road. And second, that existing traffic volumes are too high, and this subdivision would just make that worse. So in response to the first condition, we've added this red condition that you can see. The black one, of course, is a standard one that was in there before. But the developer is committed to installing whatever signage the city will approve along the project frontages on Portia and Bonanza there to address the need for some traffic calming and maybe some directional signage to help cut down on the existing issue of violating the one-way lanes on Bonanza. In response to the second concern, we had a traffic engineer analyze the existing traffic volumes a couple weeks ago and the impacts of this project also. So what they found was that on Stella, basically you've got Portia, of course, on the west, Bonanza on the east. Both of those lead up to golf links and down to Stella. And then Stella is a collector that provides access over to Harrison. So the daily volume on Stella was found to be 1,033 trips. Bonanza was found to have 1,716 trips on it that day. And Portia was found to have 247 daily trips. So Bonanza and Stella are both considered collector roads, which have a capacity of a little under 14,000 trips a day. So Stella is currently operating at about 7% of capacity, and Bonanza is currently operating at about 12% of capacity. Portia is considered a local road by Tucson standards with a capacity a bit over 10,000 trips a day. So it's currently operating at about 2% capacity. So this project's AM rush hour trips are expected to be about 36 per hour, which is a little more than one car every 2 minutes. And the PM rush hour trips are expected to be 49 per hour, which is roughly one car every minute and a half. So not a big impact. Now at the neighborhood meeting, some folks said that our traffic counts are that were taken a couple Thursdays ago weren't representative of typical volumes. I'm not sure why that would be, but even if you double or triple the measured traffic volumes, they're still well below 50% of the road's capacities. And this project will only add 10 or 15% to that, which is a minimal impact and certainly well within the capacity of the surrounding roadway system. In terms of the land use conditions, the ones we've added are in red here. And I'll run through those real quick. We're going to, I guess I should say, one of the questions that's come up before is how do we know that what we're saying is actually going to be enforced and put into this? So adding them as conditions of approval, of course, has that authority and that effect. So the developer has committed to installing a 6-foot high rear yard on all the rear yard wall on all the homes. That'll be decorative, of course, per this first condition. That's a standard one, requiring certain combination of decorative elements. Typically, they build the wall at 4.5 to 5 feet high, but recognizing the concern about privacy, they've committed to bringing that up by a foot. So now it's at 6%, or I'm sorry, 6 feet in height. Also, the perimeter buffer yards, committed to landscaping those with 50% more trees and shrubs than required by the code. And the result here, at least 3 trees behind every lot. They're ironwood, foothills, Palo Verde, velvet mesquite, and acacia. And those are found on site, and those are shown on the landscape plan. And of course, any dead vegetation there will be replaced promptly by the HOA. Front yard, also condition number 5 here, committing to a minimum installation of landscaping in the front yards as well. Committing to the 19-foot single-story maximum building height there. Also, there was a question about roof material there. Gabled roofs will be tiled, not asphalt shingled. The subdivision's HOA here will be responsible for maintaining the rec area and other common areas. And also a question came up about what would be within the rec area. So they're committing to, at a minimum, a Ramada picnic table, 2 benches, barbecue grill, and a turf area as well. Again, that's all HOA maintained. Question came up during the meeting about potential construction phase issues that may come up with dust or hours or noise or traffic or things like that. I mean, those go along with construction, but they can certainly be addressed and minimized. So the developer is committing to provide contact info to Mr. Purdek here, who is the neighborhood association contact there for the South Harrison Neighborhood Association. And then the last one here is new. Before, I should say, well, the existing terrain rises up to about 13 feet over nearby ground at most. It does fluctuate, but it goes up to about 13 feet in some areas. And the previous proposal that you saw earlier this month was to cut that down to an average difference between the finished grade of the existing homes and proposed homes of no more than 6.8 feet on the north side and 5.5 feet on the south side. Well, after much pushing and pulling, the builder has since determined they can increase their allocation within the budget for some more dirt work to allow some additional cut. So that will bring both of these numbers down below 5 feet average difference. You can see here 4.8 feet along the north edge and 4.2 along the south edge. So that's a new condition that we've just added here based on new information. So again, along the north and south edges there, we've got a 16-foot alleyway. That's a public alleyway. There's a picture of what one of these typically looks like here. Those will remain, no encroachments there. A 15 to 20-foot landscape buffer yard between the alley and the rear walls there, plus 20-foot rear yards there, which that equates to over 50 feet from the adjacent properties to the new homes. And when you add in the existing backyards, that distance from the new homes to the existing homes will typically be over 80 feet on the north side and over 70 feet on the south, just because the existing backyards are typically a little shallower on the south. But the rear yards, of course, will have that 6-foot block wall to provide additional screening. In addition to the landscaping, buffer yards will be maintained by the HOA. And again, an average of less than 5-foot difference over 70 to 80 feet is not a lot of grade difference. I think that worked out to 6-7% difference over that distance. So, I just conclude by saying this is an infill project. It's incorporated building height limitations, setbacks, landscaping, decorative wall screening to increase compatibility. All of the additional conditions that we're proposing in red that we're committing to. This is the kind of development that's encouraged by Plan Tucson. We're okay with all the conditions in the staff report and the additional ones, and we're happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olin. Go back to your slide with the additional conditions for a minute, please.
Okay, this was one, and then this one as well.
The other one right there is good.
This one?
No, yes, thank you. So number 10 there, what does it mean along the edge?
Sure. So the northern edge, for example, along here, if you remember, one of the slides from my last presentation showed the existing topo, and it's typically a lot higher on site. The highest points, there's a kind of a ridge here and then another one here. So if you take, say, the difference between lot 49 here and that house and lot 41 and that house and 33 in that house, if you take the differences between all of the proposed homes on site along the northern edge and the existing homes off site along the northern edge, and you average those, then the average of all those will be no more than 4.8 feet. Does that answer the question?
Sure. So some will be higher, some will be lower, but it'll end up average of 4.8 on the north and 4.2 on the south, right?
At most, yes.
Right. But my question was more, I think you've answered it. So when you're saying edge, there's only one row of lots proposed on the north and one row of lots proposed on the south. So you're saying that as to each of those lots on the north, the average will be not just along the edge of the lot, but as to the full lot, the average elevation difference will be 4.8 feet from the adjoining subdivision. Is that correct?
I see what you're saying. So the average here would be from the finished grade of that house to the finished grade of this one over here. Because, you know, I know the concern was really tied more to the building height. So it would be from the pad, the finished pad elevation under the building. So, you know, the lots, of course, will slope away from the building a little bit. So that would be a little bit less height there. But at most, where the building's located here, you'll have that 4.8 foot maximum average, you know, along that northern edge, and then the 4.2 on the south.
Okay, thank you very much. That addressed my question.
Thanks.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? If so, please speak up or raise your hand, and I'll get to that. I'll get to everyone who wants to talk. So, let's see. Mr. Rodriguez, Zacharias Rodriguez, I see you have your hand up, and I believe you testified at the last hearing on this matter, so I'm guessing you're here for this matter again. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so please go ahead, start with your name and address, sir, and then go right ahead.
All right, 9732 East Watson Drive. I butt up against the north side of this development. So now he's saying, I mean, and I think me and a lot of the other residents here are, I haven't received any type of notification, especially for he said that they had another meeting, you know, about this development, which I've never got anything in my mail. I've never seen anything. And I don't even know if most of my neighbors even know about this. But I think most of us are a flat out no. Now he's saying that there is going to be an average. Well, that's just an average. So some of those houses are going to be towering other backyards. So he increases it up to 6 feet. The elevation is 4.8 feet. So I'm going to be looking at almost 11 foot, 10 foot wall with new vegetation that's not going to grow for many, many years. So that definitely is a lot of concern for me. So I'm just going to say a flat out no. This project, and there's a lot of concerns. Concrete is high, lumber is high, a lot of these materials are high. So what happens if he can't even perform on this project, and then we end up with a lot that's just here half developed? So that's all I got to say about that. I'm going to be looking at a big wall if this project is approved, and it's just not going to be, you know, good for my for me and my family. Looking at, you know, a giant wall, I feel like we're going to be in a prison.
Thank you, sir. Michael and Roberta, your name cuts off. Oliver, are you here on this case? And if so, would you like to speak?
Yes, we are.
Please go ahead.
9832 East Watson Drive. We have a real concern about the density of the homes in here for this project. Along Watson Drive, every house on Watson Drive would have at least 2 of these homes behind them when you look at the map. And where we're located, we would actually have 4 homes behind us. The lot sizes for these homes are smaller than the lot sizes at the mobile home park, Harrison Hills. Harrison Hills is 50,000 or 5,800 square feet. The lot size for these is 54. So basically looking at a lot size that's smaller than a mobile home park lot size. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The density of the homes need to be dropped. We're also concerned about the traffic survey that was done. Mr. Owens said that it was done on the 13th. We know for a fact that the survey counts were not put up until the afternoon of the 13th and left out over the weekend. I'm not sure if there's any of the information from the weekend or not, but you know, that's kind of a faulty, just doesn't make sense. And One of the counters was set up on Bonanza, south of Stella. So anybody that's coming from the neighborhood and is cutting through the neighborhood to get over to Seacrest, their traffic was not counted, which is a significant number of people. People do come through the neighborhood to avoid going around past Lehman Academy on Joplin and on down to Seacrest. So they go in the back way, and their traffic is not counted. Also, the survey did not address the issue of a lot of people in the neighborhood use Irene versus Stella to access Harrison. That was not looked at. So they only looked at Portia, Stella, and Bonanza, and where it was located on Bonanza was kind of not really counting true traffic through the neighborhood. Michael, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a
Ms. Oliver, were you done? There's no one speaking, so I don't want to be rude, but are you done?
Oh. This is Michael. Michael Oliver, 9832 Watson Drive. Here's body 5730.
There's something wrong with the audio at your end, sir. So
No.
would everyone except for Mr. Oliver please mute their devices? Go ahead, Mr. Oliver. Let's see if that made it better.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Appreciate it. In reference to the previous gentleman that spoke.
No, I'm sorry. It's actually not better. I think there's something wrong with your device. So perhaps you can switch places, or I can come back to you later, but I can't understand what you're saying.
How is this?
Go right ahead. Let's try.
Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm speaking. Hello?
It cuts in and out. So we'll come back to you later, Mr. Oliver. Is anyone else in the audience wishing to be heard on this matter tonight? Yes, sir. FP.
Yes, sir.
Frank?
This is Frank Purdak.
Yes, please go ahead. Start with your name and address, sir, and go right ahead.
Yeah, Frank Purdak, 9440 East 39th Street, Tucson. I just had a concern about two comments. One being the traffic count. I was under impression that the initial count was fairly limited and that a second one would take place that would provide an adjustment for, like it was discussed earlier by the Olivers, to include a COVID-19 type of adjustment to the stats. Because we're kind of a unique condition right now. I think it's artificially low. The second concern was about the site elevation. And I understand with no dirt removal and just to be rearranged, that a big concern is the cost of labor and trucks to move the dirt away. And I just wanted to confirm that even if a dump site was provided free, that the elevation still could not be lowered due to that labor and truck expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purdak. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter?
Want to try again?
I hear someone unmuted their phone, but I don't know if you want to speak. So if you'd like to speak, please go ahead.
Yes, this is Angel Viano, 9752 East Watson Drive.
Thank you. Do your name again, please, for the record. I think you got unmuted too slowly, but go right ahead.
The first name is Angel. The second name is Viano. V as in Victor, I-A-N-O.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Just a few quick things. When Mr. Olin mentioned about 3 trees per lot, I was confused whether he was referencing the back of the lot or the entire lot, because the types of trees he was mentioning seemed rather a lot to be just in a backyard for such a small lot. And in 5 or 10 years, whenever it is they grow, that's going to be trees and overlapping sidewalks and alleys and who knows what else. The other thing which is more concerning to me is there's still this issue about all these animals who live here and what's going to happen to them if this does get approved. And is a study going to be done before they start building about what animals are actually there and which ones are actually protected or endangered or whatever terms they want to use? And are they going to just say, well, too bad we've already started? And the same thing with the archaeological study. If they're going to just wait until they've been digging and done all the damage, I mean, how does that work with an archaeological study, since we know there have been so many done and sites found within, a number of sites found within this 1 mile radius? And those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beal, I see you have your hand up. Would you please proceed?
My name is Joyce Jostin Beal. I'm the Old Spanish Trail Neighborhood Association Vice President. And I would just like to say that we got off to a real rocky start as far as communication between the developer and the neighborhood regarding this development. I think we do have a lot of concerns, and some of those concerns were addressed in the additional conditions presented by Mr. Olin. I'm grateful for the opportunity that he was able to address those and do some things that we really wanted to have done. Whereas the elevation, we really thought was going to be a moot point, and he wasn't going to be able to lower that elevation at all. We did get that lowered somewhat, and I'm appreciative of that. So let me just say that while no one is happy to have new development come into their neighborhood because they're all going to be directly affected, I do appreciate the efforts made on behalf of the developer to try to make this as palatable as possible. And those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beal. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? I'll ask one more time. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? If not, then Mr. Olin, I did have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
If you wanted to respond to any of the matters raised by any of the speakers, you may do that as well, of course. But am I understanding correctly then that you're not going to be moving any dirt off-site? Your improved numbers as far as elevation heights are the function of moving dirt, the same existing dirt around on-site. Is that right?
No. So the numbers that we had before were the 6.8 on the north and 5.5 on the south. That was as low as the thing could get pushed down by spreading it out over the whole site and still making, ADA and sewer and access work. So to lower it further, as we've committed to, that is requiring export. So, and that's expensive, but I think it is the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. And did you want to say anything else, sir?
Just real briefly that, this is not going to be a 10-foot wall behind anybody's house. Again, these houses are going to be 70 or 80 feet between each other. There's going to be a bunch of landscaping here to answer the one question about the 3 trees per home that is in the back there in that buffer yard area to provide some good dense screening. But again, you got an average of 4.8 on one side and 4.2 on the other. And it's not going to be a big ugly wall here. There's a lot of room and really not a lot of great difference here at the end of the day. once we've taken off that additional elevation.
Well, how about if we move your,
Thank you, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on that case. So the hearing's closed on C9-2103. We'll take up our second case for this evening. It's case C15-2103, Alvernon, Valencia Annexation District. Mr. Beal, would you like to present the case? Mr. Olin, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Sure, Mr.
I can
Urino.
present the case. This is Peter McLaughlin.
Perfect, Peter.
This is an application by the city of Tucson to establish original city zoning on a recently annexed parcel totaling approximately 477 acres, located in an area bounded by Valencia Road on the north, Alvernon Way on the west, Los Reales Road on the south, and a line just west of Swan Road on the east. The Planning and Development Services Department recommends approval of the R1 and I1 zones, as these are the most comparable to the existing Pima County zones and do not permit densities and uses greater than those permitted by the county zones. So translation to the city zones, these zoning classifications is recommended and is deemed appropriate. And within the annexation district, the request will also classify Valencia Road as an arterial gateway route, and Alvernon Way and Los Reales Road as arterial routes on the city's major streets and routes plan. And to date, we've received 2 approvals and 2 protests on the proposed original city zoning translation. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Reno. Mike Chakowski with the city manager's office. I have no comments. The translation zoning is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter?
I would.
Okay, please start by stating your name and address and then go right ahead.
My name is Harry Clyde. My address is 6859 South Sonoran Bloom Avenue. I'm also a member of the board of directors for this development. My concern is some of the zoning has been approved for apartments, and there's several people, including myself, are adverse against putting apartments along Valencia Road. We believe it decreases our value of our homes, and apartments sometimes have a tendency to bring problems.
Well, thank you, Mr. Clyde. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? Hearing no one, I'm going to close the hearing on case C15-2103, and we'll move to the third case, which is case C9-2107, Larea Planned Area Development. Mr. Beal or Mr. McLaughlin, would you present the case, please?
Yes, Mr. Reno, this is John Beal. This is a request by Carrie Sylvan of Lazarus and Sylvan on behalf of the property owner, Arizona State Land Department, to rezone the parcel from R1 and I1 to a pad zoning. The rezoning site is located in an area roughly bounded by Valencia Road on the north, Alvernon Way on the west, Los Reales Road to the south, and Swan Road to the east. And the total site area to be rezoned is approximately 446 acres. And then again, this rezoning is associated with a concurrent annexation original city zoning C15-2103 Alvernon Valencia Annexation District, the case that just was read. The Larea pad proposes to allow for future development in response to prevailing market conditions for a variety of residential densities and housing products, commercial services, employment, industrial uses, and open space. Arizona state land sort of operates a little bit differently than private property owners when it comes to planning and the entitlement of land. Since Arizona state land is not the ultimate developer and user of the property, detailed site planning is usually achieved once the land has been acquired by the developer. However, the PAD provides a tool to establish the initial zoning for the property and is uniquely appropriate for state trust land intended for future master plan development, where a master developer end user is not yet determined. It provides a flexible zoning tool, and it actually allows the different areas to be phased in. The current La Rea PAD establishes 9 development units, and which can be found in page 59 of the PAD document. And there, the PAD utilizes existing City of Tucson zoning districts as a basis for permitted land uses and development standards. And so the following City of Tucson zoning districts are permitted within these areas using the residential zoning districts of R1, R2, R3, and then the office zoning districts of O1, O2, O3, and then likewise the commercial zoning districts of neighborhood commercial C1 and C2, as well as some industrial zoning districts, park industrial zone, and the light industrial zone. As I mentioned, the PAD is intended to be designed so it's compatible with the existing land uses. So the proposed single-family residences are compatible with surrounding single-family residential development. Lot sizes will be consistent with lot sizes in the area. The proposed commercial uses in the northern portion of the PAD will again be compatible with the frontage of Valencia Road, which is a major arterial roadway. And then land uses proposed in the southeastern portion of the PAD have been designed to create a compatibility with the Los Reales landfill and the industrial uses to the southeast of this PAD. Land uses proposed in the southwestern portion of the PAD have been designed to ensure compatibility, again, with adjacent land uses and the Tucson International Airport. Regardless of the actual order of the development's phasing, the PAD will, as provided that the development units will be designed and constructed with infrastructure necessary to not only serve the development unit or portion thereof, but also to facilitate the adjacent development units. The request to rezone the site to a PAD is consistent with Plan Tucson and the Rincon Southeast Subregional Plan. The plan amendment is not required. Approval of the requested PAD zoning is appropriate. No other conditions are required. I should mention, and you have received that in your packet, that the applicant has modified some of the development unit 9 and development unit 7 in order to be more compatible with some industrial zoning to the south. And the applicant can probably expand more on that. As of to date, we have 2 approvals and 1 protest. And that includes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Yes, sir. Good evening. This is Rob Longacre. I'm with the WLV Group. For the record, my address is 4444 East Broadway Boulevard, Tucson, Arizona 85711. I also wanted to introduce 2 other team members that are present with us tonight. Carrie Sullivan of Lazarus and Sullivan, and Mr. John Froke, who's representing the State Land Department. So thank you for your time this evening. We look forward to presenting the PAD to you tonight. And then, of course, we are available for any questions that you may have. I also wanted to thank John Beal and the rest of the City of Tucson staff for working with us on this project. We did read their staff report, and we do agree with its findings. I have a presentation, so with your permission, I would like to share my screen.
Please go ahead.
All right, I have a PowerPoint presentation. You should see a blue slide entitled La Rea Planned Area Development.
Yep, let's go ahead.
All right. First off, I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the state land department and state trust land, just to briefly explain what it is. So state trust land is land that was granted to Arizona by the federal government in preparation of Arizona's statehood. And the department owns an enormous amount of land, 9.2 million acres throughout the state of Arizona. This exhibit shows you the blue areas are the areas that are owned by the state land department. Also, every acre that the department owns has a specific beneficiary, and there's a list of numerous beneficiaries, but at the top of the list is Arizona's public schools. So they benefit greatly from land that is leased and sold by the department. Every dollar earned goes into the state trust land. Arizona State Land Department is a general fund agency. Also of note, the state land department actually has limited resources as far as staff goes. So what they do commonly is they partner with firms such as my firm, WLB, and Kerry's firm to help them establish entitlements for the land that they own. Okay, so briefly, this is a regional location map. This gives you a sense of where the property is located in a regional sense. And the next exhibit just zooms a little bit closer in on the property and begins to identify the uses that are more proximate to it. You can see there's existing residential to the east, to the north, high school, Desert View High School to the north as well. The Valencia Reserve subdivision is in this notched out piece that's adjacent to the property. Home Goods Distribution Center to the west. And then to the southeast, you can see the location of the Los Reales landfill. I also wanted to spend a moment and explain briefly why it was selected that we use a PAD for the property. The PAD is a flexible zoning entitlement and basically allows the state land department to meet market demand for land uses that are compatible with existing land uses in the area, as well as land uses within the PAD itself. So it allows state land department to best respond to the market with available demanded land, particularly in these days where housing is so strong. It will allow the state land department to meet demand for housing. The PAD also makes use of the existing Tucson UDC and subdivision regulations. PAD also allows for a cohesively planned site where land uses, roads, utilities, and open space corridors and recreation areas can be developed in a logical, orderly, and efficient manner. This PAD is a bit unique in that it uses something called a zoning bank, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But the zoning bank is basically a flexible land use entitlement strategy that allows for multiple different land uses and zoning districts within the property. This PAD is also unique because we've established something that's called secondary planning. As Mr. Beal mentioned, the state land department doesn't actually develop the land. They sell it to others who develop it. So this PAD acknowledges that, and it sets up a secondary planning process whereby future purchasers are required to prepare certain master plans to address the following items: vehicular and pedestrian circulation, surface drainage, water, wastewater, open space and recreation, and also architectural and landscape design guidelines and a review process for those items as well. Plan Tucson, of course, is the city's general plan. I wanted to mention, of course, that this rezoning request is compliant with Plan Tucson. The PAD also offers numerous benefits to the community. It provides the opportunity for new housing in an area that is easily accessible with excellent access to I-10. It provides future residents and other users they will benefit from excellent access to the Tucson International Airport. It also provides assurances to surrounding existing development regarding the types of future land uses that we will see developed on the property. It also provides appropriate buffering between the PAD, the Los Reales landfill, and other proposed industrial uses on property to the south and to the southwest. Okay, this is the land use plan, which we call the development unit plan for the property. And as you can see, there are 9 different development units proposed for the site. And a development unit is an area in the site that has certain permitted uses. So briefly, I want to explain how we've arranged the uses on the site. In the northern part of the site, you'll see development units 1, 2, and 3. They are shown in red. And these are areas that provide an opportunity for a mixture of land uses, commercial, employment, and residential. These development units, of course, enjoy frontage on Valencia Road, so it can easily be accessed by that arterial roadway. In the central portion of the project, development units 4, 5, and 6, these have been set up and are designated primarily, or are designated for residential land use. Development Unit 7 is this purple shaped area in the southeast corner of the site. And that piece of property, that development unit, has been designated for commercial, employment, and light industrial uses. We have planned this accordingly such that we feel those uses are appropriate due to its proximity to the Los Reales landfill, existing industrial uses located to the southeast of the PAD, and also future industrial land uses that might occur to the south of the site, south of Los Reales Road. Development Unit 8 is located here. That provides the opportunity for commercial and residential land uses. And the remaining development unit is Development Unit 9, located here in the southwestern portion of the site, also in purple. This development unit has been designated for commercial, employment, and light industrial uses. And these uses are compatible with the Tucson Airport Authority abrogation easement and disclosure policy. There's a line that you can see on here, which is the 65 LDM noise contour. So basically anything on this side of that line, as opposed to this side of the line, is compatible with only employment, light industrial, and commercial uses. Residential uses on this side of the line are not compatible. Therefore, we designated the development unit as such. We also designated for those uses due to sensitivity to existing industrial zone lands to the west and to the south. So Mr. Beal was mentioning some changes to the plan. These are some of the changes that we made, and I'll briefly visit those in a moment. I also wanted to point out parks and trails on the site. So this exhibit shows planned trail systems that are on and adjacent to the site. This heavy green line you see running through the northern part of the site, that is called the Rodeo Wash Greenway. It's a 50-foot wide open space corridor. On the east, there's a similar corridor. It's called the Swan Road Greenway. Similar thing, 50-foot wide open space corridor. On the west, this red dashed line, that is called the Hughes Alvernon Path. That's a 25 to 30 foot wide open space corridor. And then this purple area here you see here, that is actually the location of the Rodeo Wash Detention Basin, but it's also the Rodeo Wash Trails Park. And there's a multi-use path that is located, that goes around the perimeter of the basin. And these trails will connect to that path. Okay, I'd like to explain briefly the zoning bank. So I mentioned it before, and the zoning bank is basically a flexible land use entitlement strategy. So what this spreadsheet is showing is, it's showing on the left the development units, and on the right, it is showing which City Tucson zoning districts are permitted in each one of the units. So we have created this basically, and the permitted zoning districts have been established based on several factors, but one of the most important factors is to ensure that any permitted use in a development unit is compatible with existing surrounding uses and also compatible with future land uses occurring within the PAD itself. So the other advantage of this is that This allows the state land department to be highly flexible and meet market demand as it comes. Of course, you never know exactly what the market is going to demand. So by offering and allowing different land uses within the development units, it allows the state land department to meet that market demand. I also want to mention briefly, and this is the last part of my presentation, neighborhood outreach. We had notified over 300 property owners and neighborhood associations as required by the city of Tucson, neighborhood outreach requirements. We had a neighborhood meeting on March 30th. We had a handful of neighbors attend our meeting. There were some issues discussed, nothing of great significance. We were also contacted by a member of the Desert Vista Terrace HOA that is north of Valencia Road. Again, they did not express any major concerns with the proposal. After we submitted our proposal, PAD to Planning Development Services, we were contacted by the owner of the property to the south of the site. And they had some concerns about our original plan and our original configuration of the development units. And they were concerned because their property is zoned industrial. And they were concerned that if there was a preponderance of residentially zoned property and in turn residential development occurring in the southern portion of this PAD, that it may make it more challenging for them to develop their property as industrial. So hence the reason why we changed the plan. And in a moment, I'm just going to show you the old plan so you can see the difference. Actually, let me just show it to you right now. So this was the plan that we previously submitted. And then after our discussions with the property owners to the south, we came up with this strategy. So we did receive a letter from that property owner, Diamond Ventures, to the south. And they are supportive of this plan as we are proposing it to you tonight. We also did receive an approval letter from Mr. DiConcini that is located to the north of the site. I believe he owns a car wash. So we are appreciative of the support letters that we received from those two parties. There was also a protest letter that Mr. Veal mentioned. It was from an entity called Cooper's Grove 2 LLC. And they mentioned some concerns with compatibility of land use in the PAD with Valencia Reserve, located here to the west. So I wanted to touch on that for a moment and indicate that this PAD will adhere to buffering and land use transition mechanisms that are already in place in the UDC for the city of Tucson. Also, it's envisioned that the property, when it develops, particularly as single-family residential, it's likely that developers will use the flexible lot development option in the subdivision regulations, and that the FLD has privacy mitigation standards contained within it, so they will be used on the site as well. Also, it's very likely, based on market demand, that development units 4 and 8 would be developed in a manner similar to the Valencia Reserve, single-family residential lots. In the event that that does not happen, then we will rely on the UDC mechanisms to provide appropriate buffering between land uses. I also wanted to mention that there is an existing drainage channel, about 30-foot wide drainage channel located on the south side of Valencia Reserve South. And there's about a 70-foot wide drainage channel adjacent to the eastern boundary of Valencia Reserve. So there's some existing buffering that's already in place, and that will not be disturbed. With that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. Thanks again for the opportunity to present tonight, and as I mentioned, more than happy to respond to any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you very much. I do have a question on the change from the existing to the new plan. So I think on the prior plan, Unit 8, well, I see it now. So the residential was all basically the same, both to the south and to the east of the existing subdivision, correct? And now you have a slightly different classification for the piece to the south of the existing subdivision. Could you just describe briefly for me the changes there?
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
So here is the original plan we submitted, and you can see Development Unit 8 did extend to the south side of Valencia Reserve South, and of course extends down to Los Reales Road. So the first thing we did to respond to the concerns of the property owner to the south was to reconfigure Development Unit 8 so that it no longer had frontage on Los Reales Road. So that's why we've added the purple area in Development Unit 9. On the south side of Development Unit 8, it's a 300-foot wide corridor that would provide for commercial employment or light industrial uses, create more compatibility between the proposed land use on the PAD and the property to the south.
Yes, that part I get. The part I think I'm more interested in right now is the classification for Unit 8 there with the darker shading, darker brown shading allows, I guess, both residential and commercial, if I'm not incorrect. Whereas on the prior iteration, it would have all been residential, no commercial.
The prior iteration actually, if you look to the table to the left here, so there's Development Unit 8, and in the table, it showed residential, commercial. So the reason we changed the color is because we realized that the color for Development Unit 8 that allowed previously residential and commercial was the same color as 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
So we realized that it was a little bit misleading. So we thought in the new plan, we better create a slightly darker brown just to identify that this piece would allow residential and commercial, whereas these other pieces in the lighter brown would only be for residential.
Okay. So then just one follow-up on that, if that's okay. So why can't the land immediately south of the existing subdivision also just be slated for residential as opposed to having it potentially commercial? I mean, that would respond to the person's protest, I think.
Sure. We felt that there probably is opportunity for commercial to be located in Development Unit 8, more likely to be located in the southern portion of Development Unit 8, more proximate to Los Reales Road. So that's why we were reserving or indicating and maintaining the ability for perhaps there to be commercial in that piece. There's opportunity also perhaps for a small commercial piece in the northwest corner of Development Unit 8, adjacent to Alvernon, which to the north, immediately to the north, is an open space area. So we thought that if there was a demand or a need for some commercial in here, it could coexist with a residential to the north.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very responsive. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Yes, I would like to be heard again.
Okay, please go ahead and start with your name and address, sir. Mr. I have it written down here.
Harry Clyde, 6859.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, as I said before, I live in Valencia Reserve and I'm a member of the HOA. I've had a couple of conversations with John from the state trust lands, and I've voiced my opinions. Basically, there's at least 5 or 6 washes going through that area. He tells me that the washes will be retained. There's a possible grave site there. I've heard nothing back about going out and with someone to identify this possible site. And I would like a copy of get a copy of this new map because it's changed. It's been changed since the one I received.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clyde. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter?
Can I make one other comment here?
Sure.
With all these trails this gentleman's talking about and the depth for along Los Reales Road, I don't see how you're going to What are you going to have left to develop? I've walked this land for 14 years. It sounds like that's taking up a big chunk of property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clyde. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? Hearing no one, Mr. Longacre, would you like to say anything further?
Yes, I would, please. I'd like to respond to Mr. Clyde's comments for a moment. He mentioned drainage going across the site, and if I could point out a few things here. You can see that there's a drainage channel that goes through Val State and Rancho Valencia, and then ends up in Swan Road. And then you can see historical flows that have gone through the site in the northern part here. So a couple things there. One is that flows will continue to be maintained through the site in this general area because they ultimately end up in the regional detention basin. So that will occur, and the details of that will be borne out in the secondary planning stage. One of the reports that needs to be prepared is surface drainage. So that report will go into greater detail about how this drainage pattern will be retained. There's also another drainage channel located here. And then you can see on the aerial historic flows that will run through the site in this area. So same thing, flows will continue to be run through this site. Ultimately, they end up in, there's a drainage channel that goes along the eastern side of Valencia Reserve, and that outlets into this basin as well. So that drainage will continue to occur across the site. There's also historic drainage that occurred in the southeastern part of the site, but you can basically see what's going on there with the development of the landfill. The surface drainage patterns in this particular area have been severely altered. So much of the historic flow that was once going through this area is no longer going through there. But that will also be studied as part of the drainage report. So, and then if there's if there's any human remains on the site, of course, they would be identified and taken care of, before ground disturbing activities would occur. But those are my comments. So thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. I'm closing the hearing on this matter. The next matter is case C-2106, Asarco, 7th and Helen. Mr. Beal or Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes, this is Peter McLaughlin to present the staff report. This is a request by Carrie Sylvan of Lazarus and Sylvan on behalf of the property owner Asarco Incorporated, zone 1.12 acre property on the southeast corner of Helen Street and 7th Avenue from O3 office zone to C2 commercial zone for the adaptive reuse of an existing 3-story office building for a multi-family residential development with 38 units and the construction of a new 3-story building with 11 residential units for a total of 49 total units. The site is located approximately 600 feet northeast of the intersection of Speedway Boulevard and Stone Avenue, adjacent to the Feldman's National Historic District. With a total of 49 units on 1.12 acres, that results in a density of 44 residential units per acre proposed. And the current O3 zoning on the property allows a maximum density of 22 residences per acre, and C1 zoning limits building heights to 30 feet. But the request for C2 zoning would allow the preservation of the existing 34-foot high building and also allow the proposed density of 44 units per acre. The proposal includes the preservation of the historic building that was built between roughly 1964 and 1971 as an office building. The applicant is currently working with the Arizona State Historic Preservation Office to have that building individually listed on the National Historic Registry. These efforts align with Plan Tucson and the university area plan policies that encourage the retention of historic structures by including them as integral components of new development. The traffic study conducted and provided by the applicant indicates that less traffic will be generated by the proposed multifamily residential use during peak hours than with the existing office use at full capacity. The proposed rezoning of the site from O3 to C2 is appropriate for this location and is compatible with existing surrounding land uses and is in compliance with Plan Tucson and the University Area Plan, and subject to compliance with the requested with the preliminary conditions. The requested C2 zoning is recommended. To date, we've had 5 approvals and 0 protests on the property, and the approvals include a letter from the Feldman's Neighborhood Association Board, as well as 2 email approvals and 2 of the standard approval protest forms that we've received. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Yes, Mr. Ureno. This time it's Carrie Sylvan and not Rob Longacre. If I can, I'd like to share my screen. I'm going to do a brief presentation on the project and then focus on mainly answering questions. I do want to introduce some of our team members who are here in case there's any questions that I can't answer. Zach and Steve Fenton. I'm Carrie Sylvan, 5983 East Grant Road, representing Asarco, which is the property owner, and then Steve and Zach Fenton, who are the developers for the project. The Fentons are longtime Tucsonans. They've worked on a number of redevelopment projects, successfully accomplished adaptive reuse and a number of other projects. Also with us is Marcos Esparza from M. Esparza Engineering, who is our traffic engineer, and Robin Larch, who's a senior land planner with our office. I'm going to run through really quickly the existing site, the zoning background, our proposal, and then the work that we did with the neighbors, and really appreciate the Feldman's Neighborhood Association board and leadership, and particularly Diana Lett for working through some of their concerns with us. As most people probably know, this is at the corner of 7th and Helen. It's the surrounding uses are mostly office, school, restaurant, multifamily with some single family residential and rentals. The current zoning on the property is O3, and it's been used for office by Asarco since we think since it was built. Surrounding uses are C2 to the east, C1 to the north, south, and west, and you can see the C3 that's a little bit further to the west. We are within the Feldman's Neighborhood Association. West University is to our south on the south side of Speedway, and then Miracle Mile is over on the west near Stone. There's 2 buildings currently on the site. You can see the larger building, we'll talk about it in a minute, and there's a smaller building in the corner. The smaller building is not historic. It's a 1-story. It's excess office space and a server room. The larger building was constructed, as Mr. McLaughlin said, in somewhere between 1964 and 71. It's not currently listed as historic, but the Fentons are working with the local consultant and have already met with the State Historic Preservation Office and have the applications en route to have it designated as historic. The copper siding on the outside is one of the character defining features of that historic, which becomes important in one of the conditions that we worked on with the Feldman's neighborhood. The current building is going to be preserved. It's 34 feet in height. It's currently used as an office. Our plan with the site is an adaptive reuse to convert from office to multifamily. We can, within the existing building, we are proposing and can get 38 units, which is a combined mainly studios and 1-bedrooms. Because of that unit density, as well as it's because of the unit density that we need to rezone, and then we need to rezone to C2, which I'll talk about in a minute, because of the height. So the C2 is both for the density that can support the adaptive reuse of the existing building, and then it does allow us to propose, which we've done, a second, much smaller building for another 11 units. We also need the C2 for the height. So the O3 does not permit the density that we need. C1 would be the next zoning up, but C1 caps our height at 30 feet, so it doesn't capture the existing building. And we definitely want to adaptively reuse that. So the request is for the C2 zoning. The use, as I said before, is going to be multifamily. We are, and we've shown this on the preliminary development plan, that the second new building will have the same height requirement at 34 feet. Landscaping will meet code in the parking area and the buffers as required. And because we're going to be adding landscaping within the parking area, we're actually increasing the pervious surface, which is going to help with the drainage. We also worked very closely with Feldman's on some water harvesting commitments that you'll see in the conditions as well. For the traffic analysis indicates if this property were fully occupied for an office, based on the ITE manual, actually converting it to multifamily reduces the morning trips by 21 and the afternoon trips by 15. In working with the neighborhood, we do know that ASARCO has not been fully utilizing this building. There were other offers on the building to continue to use it as office. We believe they probably would have filled it. But regardless of the fact that our TIA in a future condition may reduce the traffic, we did work with Feldman's and neighborhood association. They asked us to commit to the speed hump on Helen, as well as some restricted movements out of our driveway. We only have one access drive, and that's the one that's going to remain on 7th Avenue. It may reconfigure a little bit, but it's going to be predominantly in the same area on 7th Avenue. Also, along with this request, and it came in simultaneously, it's actually, we do this during the development package process, is an individual parking plan. So the code actually requires for our residential use 74 parking spaces. We are proposing a 1 unit to 1 parking space, which is really more appropriate in an urban setting, which is the 57 spaces. So we were asked by staff to go ahead and initially submit the IPP, the individual parking plan. We've attached that to our rezoning request as well. It's a separate request, and I know that the Feldman's Neighborhood Association and the neighborhood is aware we're going to be requesting this. We will be working on some additional bicycle storage as well, and because of the folks that we intend to attract, which are employees in the surrounding businesses and downtown, we believe that we're hoping, as is Feldman's Neighborhood Association, that we've got a lot of pedestrians and cyclists, and we certainly don't want to overpark. Just to touch on our work with the Feldman's Neighborhood Association. So one of the concerns was the historic preservation. So we worked with actually the ward office, city staff, Jody Brown, as well as John Beal, and Feldman's on condition number 6 to acknowledge that we are in the process. We will be finishing that off, and the building will have to be retained, which it will need to for the tax credits anyways, in the historic status pursuant to the Secretary of Interior standards. Conditions number 13 and 14 are related to traffic. We agreed to post a sign at our exit that restricting the turning movements as a no right-hand turn or left turn only. And again, the speed hump on Helen as well to help slow down the traffic in the neighborhood. Security was a big issue for the neighborhood association. So we added condition number 7. The neighborhood wants to make sure it retains it's fenced all the way around. So we have limited access at the driveway as well as pedestrian limited access. And we specifically mentioned the copper exterior because that was a concern. So we have a condition requiring us that we maintain the copper. And then it is one of the elements of the importance of the historic designation. So we'll be required to maintain the copper in that sort of regime as well. Condition number 8 has the water harvesting conditions that we discussed, and those acknowledge that we are dealing with an existing site, but we worked with the neighborhood on the things that we can do in the landscape areas and in the parking lot. And then there were some concerns about the outdoor lighting code, so we worked on condition number 9. In conclusion, we are in agreement with all the standard and special conditions, especially the ones we negotiated with the Feldman's Neighborhood Association. We respectfully request your recommendation to approve, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvan. I don't have any questions right now, but I appreciate it. I had an email saying that Diana Lett wished to speak tonight. Ms. Lett, would you like to be heard now?
I would. My name's Diana Lett. I live at 1309 North First Avenue. That's 6 blocks away from the project site. I'm speaking on behalf of Feldman's Neighborhood Association. I won't reiterate what's in the letter that you've received from me. I do want to underline our enthusiastic support for this project and to give you a couple of additional reasons why we support it. The alley immediately to the east of this location has been a magnet for homeless encampments, prostitution, and drug use. Having more eyes on the site is a good thing in our view. So that's another reason why we're enthusiastic about this project. We want to see this area activated. I also want to add that the city of Tucson in many different contexts has been concerned about increasing the supply of housing. And so we are enthusiastic about having this site turned into an apartment complex. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lett. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes, please go ahead. Start with your name and address, sir, and then go ahead.
Tim Brown. I own the insurance office at 131 East Speedway, which is directly southeast of the proposed redevelopment. My concern, well, I know that they're looking at this currently as an office complex and that the 49 units is going to actually reduce the traffic flow. But as stated earlier, Sarco does not use that at full capacity and probably hasn't for many years. So we don't know what the impact really is of a full capacity office complex there. But I can say, or I think that it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that 49 units where you have 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and studios is going to have 49 or less vehicles at that location. I would say a conservative number would be more like 60. And then you have guests that will be probably searching for parking because there won't be parking on the site if it's at full capacity, especially in the evenings. So that's one of my concerns. I'm totally for the project. I think it's a great idea, repurposing that structure, that property. But I would advocate also that road that I think Diana just talked about, Faro, which is an alley road that runs to the east, is completely degraded, as well as the the alley that leads out to 6th Avenue. I would advocate as part of this project that that road and the alley be improved, because I believe during the construction phase, it's going to further degrade those roads, those roadways. And if we're really talking about improving the area, and the previous speaker talking about the homeless encampments and the drug use and the prostitution, I've witnessed that on a daily basis because that's where my office is. That just improving the whole area around it is going to make a big difference. And so, I don't know if I'm talking to the right person about that, but I would advocate for that road to be improved, particularly Faro. The alleyway is just as bad that runs along the south side of the Montessori school.
And parking.
I'm sorry? I
Go
lost.
go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I heard something about parking. And actually that brings up another point I have, because I have my parking lot is to the north of my property, which is directly catty corner to this redevelopment. And I can see that being an issue with people looking for parking, that they're going to park in my parking lot, but I know that's my problem. But anyway, those are my concerns. I did submit comments. Apparently you didn't receive them. And I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard? I'm hearing no one. Ms. Sylvan, did you want to address anything that came up subsequent to your presentation?
I can try to address the parking. And I know Marcos Esparza, I know you're on the call and you did the parking analysis and the traffic analysis. Did you want to respond to any of those?
Yeah. Hi, Carrie. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'd be happy to if you'd like me to. The parking analysis is something that the city allows for, and it's called an individual parking plan whenever there are, there's a deficiency in the number of parking spaces based on Tucson code for how many parking spaces should be in a particular development. And the code allows for this individual parking plan to identify whether or not the parking demand is actually going to be what the code thinks it is. And for this project, the code says that I believe there's a need for 70 some parking spaces, and the individual parking plan has indicated that we're working on that. The 49 spaces that are available on site will be sufficient based on the proximity of alternative mode infrastructure and services such as transit lines that run along Speedway and Stone, the availability of bikes to rent, as it were, from the To-Go, the bike lanes that are not necessarily on Speedway right in front of the project, but nearby and along 6th Avenue and other nearby streets. There's a pretty big bike population in this area. So the individual parking plan looks at all of these factors. Also the availability of on-street parking within a certain distance of the project. And the determination is made based on all of these things, that whether or not the 49 spaces is sufficient, or if it's not, or if the code is inflexible enough but correct in this case, in which it's not. We don't believe that it is. We think there's plenty of opportunities for people to park. And one of the things that we talked about earlier, was mentioned earlier, was the trip generation of the project, how many trips were going to be coming in and out of the site. And what we do is we use a standard guideline, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Handbook, which has trip rates for various land uses. And for this land use, apartments, they're typically not as heavy in trip generation as, say, single family dwellings. And so the number of trips that we're predicting for this project are about, let me see, I just had it. For 49 units, we're predicting, based on the average rates in this document, 18 trips in the morning, 22 trips in the evening, and this is during the peak hours. And those are a combination of trips coming in and out of the project during those peak hours. So the project itself is not a high trip generator, and also because of that relates somewhat to the parking demand in that for this project also.
And the only thing that I would add to is that there's no access intended on Faro or the alley, and that's to the south. So the work, like I said, we did with the neighborhood association is really restricting access. We're trying to force everybody to come out of our driveway and turn left. So they're using the arterials. They're going straight down to Speedway. And then even if some people are coming in or use Helen, we agreed that that's an area that Feldman's has been having some issues. We understand the issues with Faro and the alley condition. That's something that we're not adding to it because we're not asking for access or doing anything in those areas. So we're focused on the areas where we're having the impact. If there's anything else you want us to address, Mr. Urino, we're happy to.
No, but thank you very much. And with that, we'll close the public hearing on this case. I want to thank everyone for participating, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening and safe. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.